Right, so we've got this bit of yew here. It's a really odd shaped piece of yew. It's a spindle piece. The grain is in this orientation, although there is a knot here and there, and it is in rough shape. So let's get this round and see what we've got. Okay, so I turned it up to 1700 RPM. Should get a better cut. Let's take a look at that. Still got some flat spots. Here and here and here. Checking around this. Almost. It's pretty close. Let's take a look. We've got a saw mark here on this end we have to get rid of. It's pretty round though, so I'm going to have to trim up the two ends, put a tenon on one end. I think I'm going to put a tenon on this end because this is going to have to get all cut away. So the saw mark. So I'll use a parting tool, I think. No, actually a diamond parting tool. This one. So I've got to raise my tool rest a little bit. So I'm cutting close to center. Take a look at that. Okay, so it's flat on both ends. I'm going to put a tenon here and then we'll get it in the jaws of a chuck. Got to get up to speed. That's the size I'm looking for. A little bit smaller. That's close enough. Now with the skew we'll get a bit of a dovetail put into that. Tighten that up a little bit. You only really need that if it's in reverse, those two screws, to hold it on the spindle. I'm not going to use tailstock support because it's quite small. So I'll actually eject this so I don't get it in the elbow. So I often come in the workshop without a clue what I want to make. And I walk around the workshop and I find pieces of wood and pieces of whatever, like this Banksia pot I'm supposed to turn for somebody, this piece of resin which is actually stuck in the pipe. I'm going to have to turn the pipe off so it will go in the jaws. That'll be a dragon egg hopefully one day. I don't always know what I'm going to do when I come into the shop, but it's always fun. Okay. I don't even know what I'm doing with this. Making a little pot. Got to decide on a shape. So I think it's going to be wide at the base, coming in narrow. What shall I make? Okay, so I think I'm going to make a hollow form out of this. It's going to be a very small hollow form, but it's a beautiful piece of wood, so I want to make something out of it. So I'm going to bring the top in and the bottom in, and it's going to be rounded and then hollow. Using a, what is it? Using a spindle gouge. I've got to come in quite a bit more to lose that little piece there. So I'm going to bring the tool rest closer to reduce vibration. A little bit more still. Still a little bit more. Put it in there. Close to the shape that I'm looking for, but it needs cleaning up a little bit more. So I use my skewer as a negative rate scraper just to clean up the shape a little bit. I had a couple of tool marks I was trying to get rid of. They are now gone. So I'm going to remove that with a parting tool, and then I'm going to drill into it with a Forstner bit and then hollow the inside of this out, and then I'll be parting the bottom off when it's all finished and ready to go. It's actually quite a pretty piece of wood. So I will use the diamond tip parting tool to remove that little piece at the end. Adjusting the height of the tool rest to cut on center. What I'll do is I'll put a little divot in there for the drill to get started, and then I'll choose a Forstner bit to go in. This is a 7/8 Forstner bit, so I'm going to put this in the chuck, in the Jacobs chuck. And figure out my depth that I want to be. I just marks the drill bit with a pencil for my depth. Double check that. Should be good. Bring that up. And my speed is slow. I'm actually doing about 400 RPM. clean out that a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to sand the outside of this right now. I'm going to start at, I think, 220, and it'll be 220 and 320. That's all I'm going to do to this, and then I'll hollow it out with the Easy Wood. So I sort my sandpaper out in one of those toolboxes, and I start with 60, 80, 100, 120, 150, 180, 220, 320, 400. That's really all I ever do. Usually only go up to 320, depends on the piece, and it depends on the piece as to where I start. The less tool marks, the less tear out, the higher grit that you can go to. So I'm going to actually start this on 220 grit and then 320 grit, and that's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to be using the Easy Wood hollowers to hollow this out. It's a very small item, so it shouldn't take too much. Famous last words. So let's bring the camera in close, because otherwise you're not going to see anything, because I'm going to be standing right. Alright, it's always good to use a compressor to blow the shavings out and see where you're at. It's actually looking really smooth in there. It's feeling really smooth. I've got to go in a bit more. So I've got some more in the bottom area down here that I need to get, so I'm going to use a straight cutter for that. This is a brand new cutting tip on here as well, so very sharp. Again, cutting on center. I'm not actually going to sand the inside, because it would be hard to, so the cut is actually pretty smooth on the inside anyway, so I'm just going to try and really make the outside pretty and then part it off, get a finish on it. And what we're going to do is I'm going to start the parting off process at the bottom to figure out what my bottom's going to look like, and then do the last little bit of finishing on the outside, and then we'll part it off completely. Making the underside concave so it doesn't rock about on the surface when you set it down. I just got to clean up that bottom lip edge, maybe do a little bit more sanding and then finish. Just got to sand that bottom section where I just put the parting tool. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do now again is clean it with denatured alcohol. Just gets any sawdust residue off of the surface. And then when that is cleaned, take a sanding sealer. Not going to worry too much about the inside. Although I suppose I could put some sanding sealer in there, wouldn't hurt. Okay, so the sanding sealer will seal the fibres of the wood. Just give that a minute to dry off. and then we'll move on to Yorkshire Grit Original, and then the microfine. Put a small amount of the original on, and this will do your sanding. Liquid sandpaper. Start off slow and then increase your speed. Move on to a fresh piece of paper towel when you think it's done its job. Doing about 1800 RPM. Remove all the residue. And it has done its job. You can actually do a couple of coats of Yorkshire Grit Original. Why not? Because it will bring the shine even more so to this piece. Again, starting in slow speed, just like sandpaper, only a hell of a lot easier. Bringing the speed up. Okay, so I did the Yorkshire Grit microfine after the original, same process, and now I'm going to put the Hampshire Sheen High Gloss and then the microcrystalline wax. Essentially just wiping them on, allowing them to vap off, dry a little bit, and then buffing them in. And then I'll be parting this off. So again, slow speed, just wipe it all over and then let that dry. Okay, so I've allowed that to dry for a couple of minutes. Now what I'm going to do is burnish that in. On high speed. Same thing with the microcrystalline wax. I'll just apply a small amount over the surface, and I'll let that dry, and then I'll buff that in as well. Okay, I'm going to buff that. Nice high speed again. Making sure that there's no residue on there coming off on the paper towel, so it's burnished in properly. You don't want that surface to be tacky when you're done. Okay, so I'm going to part this off. The hollow form, it looks, I'm quite happy with the way it looks, but I had a bit of an issue parting it off. As I tore the fibres of the last little piece, it twisted off and actually made a very small hole, so it's a funnel essentially, but there is meat there. So what I'm going to do is take that little piece there and I'm going to glue it in there, because I don't think it would really notice. So the first thing I'm going to do is sand this down and then see what I got. Okay, so as you can see, the small hole is right in the center, and I'm actually going to fill it with sawdust. As I was sanding, it filled up with sawdust, and I'm going to put just a drop of super glue there. And I think that that would be more than adequate to hide that, because it was such a small hole. Okay, so what I'm going to do, continue sanding that. And I think what I'll do now is I'll sand this by hand up to 320 and then put some sanding sealer on it and just kind of buff it in and wax it a little bit, and then we'll come back to you with some pictures at the end. And thanks for watching. There it is. It's a very small hollow form made from yew. It was a piece that my buddy gave to me quite a few years ago when I first started wood turning, and it's been sat in my shop all these years, and I finally got the last piece of it turned. This is literally 3 inches around by 2 inches high. It's very small, but it's a little hollow form. It's great practice for the easy wood tools, numbers 1, 2 and 3. I have the medium set. There is also a smaller set and a larger set. But there it is. I know it's been a few weeks since I've put any videos out, but I've been busy in the shop doing all kinds of changes, from dust extraction for my table saw to putting a blind up that's behind me so the shavings from the lathe literally get stopped 3 feet behind me and they drop to the floor right there. Normally they'd be all across the entire shop, so that was definitely a huge bonus to have that. Also, I have a paper towel rack which is just above me now, which I just made yesterday actually, because I'm always losing my paper towels, so now they're just above my head there. I've got all kinds of projects on the go, and I haven't really been doing much videoing, but I've been extremely busy doing some flat work lately. So coming up I'll probably do some flat work videos, and also some Celtic pens that I've been making. So I've got to kind of push the limits on my on Celtic pens and see what I can come up with. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again for the next wood turning video. Take care now.